I am Paula Wilhite, and I'm originally from Chicago. However, I was raised in Southern California, and I moved to Northern California and became a real estate broker. And in doing that, I felt that it was time to give back to my community. So I started a nonprofit called the iVibe program, and it is designed for girls of color.
All right. So my name is Randy Davis, formerly Wilhite. This is my mother. So I am a licensed clinical social worker here in the state of California. I've worked as a psychiatric social worker at a wellness center throughout different places in Los Angeles, from Watts to Carson, San Pedro. So it's been amazing, an amazing experience. I was born in Newport Beach, so Orange County, moved to Sacramento and was raised for the most part in Sacramento, and then relocated back to Los Angeles where I have a family out here. So I do that, and I also do private practice via telehealth as well as a therapist. And I also do iVibe for the program and organize that as well.
Wow, I love this mother duo team. Let's win. Very accomplished, Randy. Very accomplished, as well as her, just like your mom. Okay, so let's get into it. As it relates to Black on Black students and white on Black students when it comes to hate crime, bullying, as well as teen violence, I'm really glad to get your perspective and feedback on the following issues that we're going to talk about. First, what do you believe to be the root causes of the hate that youth, community members, ethnic groups are experiencing in California, especially when we talk about the root of anger that makes individuals and groups lash out hatefully to others without remorse?
I'm just going to start a little bit on that. I think a lot of it has to do with personally, not just systemic. I think it's hopelessness. I think a lot of it is watching social media, thinking of things that they should have, when they're looking at other people that, feeling disadvantaged to a lot of people that they see on social media. So I really think a lot of that has to do with, it's also the way they're being raised. Has a lot to do with it. We have a lot of younger parents raising children now, and sometimes they don't know things themselves. So that's kind of what I would say.
Okay. So from my perspective, I didn't say initially, but I received a dual degree in psychology and African American studies. So I always look at it from a historical lens. So when I look at the root causes, I don't think that we can have this conversation without going back. I always like to reference Sankofa of return back to get it. It's a Adinkra symbol, and also has so much power in its meaning in that you have to go back and know your past and understand the past in order to move forward in the future. And I do believe that in the sense of Black on Black, or when looking at members of the African diaspora. So those that are here in America, I think a lot of the root causes is not knowing our history. And so when you don't have history, you don't have a lot of hope. And when you don't have that, you also have systemic racism, which plays into it as well. So when you combine those two, where you have those that are, our ancestors, many of those that came from slavery endured a lot of different traumas. And those traumas have been passed on from generation to generation, called intergenerational trauma. So we do still see remnants of that. We have evidence of epigenetics, where trauma is passed on from generation to generation. So mother to child and so on. We also see certain behaviors. So when we're talking about specifically Black on Black, we have to look at it from a historical lens as well as a systemic lens. So with systemic racism, we know that there's a lot of disenfranchisement of Black people, a lot of discrimination against Black people. And so when you have that, you have inadequate resources being distributed to the community. And that breeds a lot of anger. And in addition to that, it breeds a lot of effects that cause self-hatred, self-doubt. And that's what we see when we see like a lot of internalized racism. So when you see Black on Black crime, you see a lot of hatred and anger. A lot of that stems from this idea of internalized racism of there's not enough resources, so I have to fight. I have to compete just to get something, just to get my basic needs met.
Right.
So with systemic racism, you have all systems impacted: education system, the healthcare system. So I can go on and on about that,
Grocery
but
stores.
just access to nutrition,
Yeah.
right? So just having your basic needs met. When those things are not being met, then it causes a lot of that anger and a lot of division within communities, and you're going to have a lot of problems. So you have that from that societal lens, in addition to also looking at internalized racism when you have this hierarchy of differences on the spectrum. So you have whiteness being at one side and then Blackness being on the other. So when you have that, then those that are closest to Black, you're going to find a lot of that that division.
Wow. So, as a clinical psychologist, Randy, what would you say to the young people and even young adults, teenagers, young adults, who are experiencing bullying, hate crime, and they may be a victim of this, but they're not sure how to come forward, especially when we talk about our Black teenagers, our Black young adults who have been victimized by non-Black persons. Okay. So, and what would you say to that person feeling kind of ashamed or feeling like they might be ostracized if they come forward? And how do they share what has happened to them as a victim of, one of these different things that I just mentioned?
Yes. So, I work with students. So at the wellness center that I work at, I do work with a lot of students, and we do come across a lot of bullying and victimization and these problems, and it's a societal issue, right? And so what I always encourage is oftentimes, because I know how trauma is, bullying is considered trauma, and there's also other stressors in regards to trauma. And so what I often do is, I would suggest or encourage that person to talk to an adult, someone that they feel very close to and have built trust and rapport with, about their experiences, because we know that talking to someone and actually expressing their needs and the things that are going on in their lives is something that does promote change. So they don't feel alone and they can connect to someone. So I always encourage protective factors. Those protective factors are things like encouraging them to talk to adults at school, making sure they have adults like mentors and coaches and people at home if they do. And in addition to that, what I encourage is, if there's a friend group or those that they know. So like, for instance, like a BSU, a Black Student Union, or finding like-minded people with commonalities and coming together to express, so that way they can actually become change agents and they can become empowered to make a difference and change.
Mhm.
So I always encourage that there's some sort of that they seek out for help, whether it be adults at the school, whether it be friends and social groups that have commonalities, and then it can empower them to find leadership roles and in accessing like different ways in which they can advocate for themselves by anti-bullying techniques or campaigns, and seeing if there's an adult that can actually help with that. And in addition to that, I think that it's really, really important to acknowledge the traumas, because
Right.
oftentimes what I see at the school is that no one wants to mention race. No one wants to mention color, that's the reason, when a lot of these are real hate crimes. So the victimization and bullying and things by their non-Black peers, it gets dismissed as just, oh, they're just being, they're doing kid stuff. It's bullying. But what I have seen is there is a lot of racial trauma that's happening. And with these experiences, I always encourage some psychoeducation, where I provide education on what what would be deemed as, someone messing around with you, or is this a hate crime essentially? And then having them advocate for themselves to really create that change and finding those protective factors to help, to help them to get out of that situation. So I do believe that coming together is, as a strong unit is really, really important when it comes to when they feel that they are being victimized or bullied. So I think for me, I would want to empower that student to gather together to really create change.
Well, that's a good one, Randy.
Yes, I love how you talked about protective factors and creating change agents. That's excellent. So, this is a question for you both. And I would like you to think about what would you like to see local public health partner agencies do to address these hate-based crimes and bullying in our schools, in our community.
Whew. It's so hard because I think back when I was coming up, many, many years ago, we had so much community involvement, after school programs. We had, they had Campfire Girls, Girl Scouts, they had the Dolphin Club, they had the Small World Club, all different types of things to do after school. We don't have any of those things anymore. You have now, if you don't make the team, you can't get into sports. Back then we could do sports on the play yard and win ribbons and stuff so that we felt good about what we were doing, crafts and things. We just don't have a lot of those resources, and we need to bring it back, because a lot of times there's just things that the kids are doing things because they don't have nowhere to go. They don't have anything. So what are they going to do? They're going to hang around the kids in the neighborhood who say they love them. And, that's how things, that's just my idea. I just think we need more community like we used to have years ago. Back in the day, if you were climbing in a tree and your neighbor told you to get down, you better get down, because you're going to get in trouble from her and you're going to get in trouble from your mother. Now, if you go out there and tell a kid to get down from the tree or whatnot, their parents are coming out cussing you out for dealing with the kids, and you're looking out for their safety. So it's just a different time we're in, but we really need to bring back community and programs for these kids to get involved in, especially leadership programs. That's why we created iVibe for that. So for girls, because there's a lot of things for guys, but not for girls. So.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on that. I think that there's the village that was once a very, they say it takes a village to raise a child, right? So I think that sense of community is lost. And I think that, economically, a lot has changed, where now there's a need for multiple sources, streams of income. Those that would be the grandparents to help care for the children are now having to work themselves. So, that's on a societal level and very problematic. We have budget cuts to education and programming that is definitely essential and needed for our kids. That's like on a broader level. As in regards to public health officials, I really do. I could be very biased, but as a therapist myself and licensed clinical social worker, I find that more mental health wellness centers for students, where if they don't have a trusted adult at the school site, or they don't have a trusted adult at home, they know that they can go to a place to seek help and resources. And that's what I enjoy doing. That's something I'm very passionate about. So what I would encourage is more mental health wellness centers attached to schools, that can bridge that gap and make sure that there's accessibility to mental health services for the community. So for the kids and the students, as well as the adults. So when it comes to bullying, when it comes to victimization, when it comes to all of these different problems that our kiddos are facing, bullying is not just the physical in the schools anymore. Now it's gotten to the social media. Now it's ongoing. You can't go to sleep without it going away. And so when you have those things, it's really, really hard. And so you feel like you're alone when you're in it as a student. So to know that there's a trusted adult that you can go to seek resources, to seek help, to just vent and be able to learn life skills and ways to manage really distressing emotions and feelings is the most important. So I would consider it a mental health issue. And that also goes with racial trauma that we talked about before. I think that there's a way that it can be targeted, because now with social media, a lot of kids have access to seeing a lot of the killings and the things that have happened to people that look like them. And research has shown that when they see someone else that looks like them, that is being killed or beaten or having these traumatic experiences, they are actually can experience it. So it's really like vicarious trauma. So we really want to, protect our kids in those ways. So if I had to encourage public health officials to do something, it would be community programs, mental health, wellness centers, and resources. In addition to building back that community and that village.
I have one more thing too. I also feel that they should not only just always focus on the kids, but I also feel that there should be programs for adults as well, as far as parenting, because sometimes I think there's a lot of people that can use, some parenting skills, because it's kind of hard when you're dealing with the girls, you're working with them, and then they have to go back to the same environment that they came from. So even though you're trying to lift them up, give them all of the confidence that you can give them, if they're going home to something else that's telling them different, then it becomes very hard for them. And sometimes, I think that parenting
Yeah.
workshops would be awesome.
Again, if they don't have those familial, like that family village, then having that extended family, right? So having others that can help support them, give them resources, and provide them that information of how to parent and to develop those skills.
Yeah, because some of those things are placed on their kids.
I love this. Great suggestions for our state governor, as well as all of the city mayors across the state of California.
Amen.
Yes.
In bill form. Thanks, ladies. So I do want to ask from the both of you, what is your best advice and or quote for Black preteens and teenagers, young people, to live by as they are growing up in today's society, faced with these hate crime and bullying issues that we've been discussing?
Let's see. A man without history is like a tree without roots.
Yeah. So Marcus Garvey had coined that quote. I think it's really, really important. So, when you don't have knowledge of your culture, your background, your past history, your origin, which members of the Black diaspora, the African diaspora, were stripped, right? Were stripped of their history, were stripped of culture, and those things that really root us, that grounds us as a community. When you do not have that, then there is no hope. You are impressionable, and you sometimes have that internalized racism where you just go along with, or you start to believe in that idea of racial inferiority, that there's a hierarchy in different races. So when you don't know your history, then you are just like a leaf blowing in the wind. You're not grounded to anything. So I think that that's a really powerful quote that is really, really important for our young Black people to really hold on to, so that way they can start it. I hope that it inspires them and empowers them to say, you know what, I'm going to learn about my history.
Absolutely.
I want to learn more. At the iVibe group for girls, in that program, what we do is we do a deep dive into history. So we have them develop a narrative talking about their own family roots and where do they come from, not only racially, but ethnically, through foods, through music, and all of those things. And if they don't know, which oftentimes they don't, we encourage them as homework to go ask their parents and to really go through this journey of self-discovery. Because it's only then that they'll be empowered to actually create change and know where they come from and understand the beautiful, rich history and the ancestors in which they come from. So really, I always acknowledge my ancestors and know, like, I stand on the shoulders of them, and it's only through them that I'm able to do what I do. And so I just want our Black youth to feel empowered in knowing that they have a rich and beautiful history.
Absolutely.
And it was not just about enslaved people, but that we'd made a lot of create a lot of change. And hopefully in doing the research, they can recognize a lot of the historical things that have been erased. And I think that that's really important because it's being erased from our education system and our history books. It's just being changed and altered. And so in knowing your history, knowledge is power. So the more that they know about themselves and where they come from, then they can be those future generations to inspire and empower other people as well surrounding them. So I think that that's a beautiful quote that they can just really internalize and believe in, because it'll make the biggest difference.
Yeah, research is everything.
Oh, I love this. Now, I have one last question because from the time that I met Paula, I've, admired. I know social media can be the devil, but it can also be the highlight of family dynamics. And you guys are public, just like as myself, with your family. You have come from a big family. Paula, you're the mother of twins, beautiful twin daughters,
Yeah.
Randy and
Ryan.
Ryan, let's forget. And you have 5 grandchildren. Randy
Yes,
is with us.
we
He
do.
has 3, and Ryan has 2. So I do want to talk about, how you all have dealt with society, lifestyle, and everything that has been thrown at you. Now we got social media. When there was no social media, now you have social media, you have the impact of the news with these horrible incidences that come up in our schools. Like I sent you a video of the black on black. We all know that it's white on black crime when it comes to our preteens, when it comes to hate and bullying. So, what would you say to young parents, grandparents, and just, our people today? What has helped you? What can you share with them on what has helped you to journey through this and keep going, to stay inspired? What has helped you? What can you share with others so they can have hope for the future? Because you talked about hopelessness. So we're trying to keep people hopeful for the future.
Well, I guess Randy I guess for me it's just always especially with my daughters, being open, being honest, being authentic. Them, being able to speak whatever. I used to always tell my daughters, you can tell me whatever you need to tell me. It's just how you tell me is going to be the reaction that I give. So learning how to speak up, but in a respectful way. You get more with sugar than you do with salt, and they've learned that. And yeah, I just think family is so important to all of us, and just laughing and having a good time. I think now with everything being stripped from us again, still, as we know what's going on, I think that we have to encourage our kids, and we have to be the ones to give them their history and tell them about how, where they come from and how proud they should be. And, all the things that they're not taught in school. There are only few people that they talk about, everybody, as far as what Jane Pittman, Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey and stuff, but there's so many others that have been inspiring as well. So I think encouraging, like even with my granddaughter, I got her a book of all the things that African American women have done in the past, so that she can see for herself. It just can't rely on the schools anymore. So I just think that that's it. Reach out to your family, give them a lot of love and attention, and that's my thing. I'll let Randy talk on that.
I think also with my age and becoming a mom during a time where the social media started to boom, it was really changing. Like it changed everything. So this is very new. Of what do I allow my children to be exposed to? What's going to impact them? Who are on these social media sites, or in general, who are who's having access to my children or in my home. So I think what's really important, and the feedback that I would give, is that social media can be very powerful, and it can share a lot of information that we weren't privy to before. I think it just needs to be in a way that is supervised, and a way that can be impactful and positive. And I think that there is a way to do that. It's like I like to look at it as like, if you feed yourself and your body crap, you're going to get crap. And if you feed it nutritious foods and healthy foods and living foods, then it's going to be very positive and uplifting. So I think it's the same that goes with social media. I think that with today's day, with how social media can be used, there is a good and a bad. And I think that it's important to shift ourselves to say, okay, how can we use this for good? It can share beautiful works of people doing acts of service and being of service to other people.
Change agent.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would like to empower our youth to use it for good, not looking at to compare themselves and what they wish for and what they're jealous of, but actually using it to actually promote themselves and empower themselves and others, and showing them a different way, that there's more ways to use social media than just looking at someone and wanting to have their life or something that, they may not have access to, or just all the bad, negative, worldly stuff. I think it can be really, really powerful. And even with certain social media platforms, I mean, sometimes there's so many great things to learn, new skills to develop. Especially when they're in their adolescence, that's where a second wave of pruning process happens, where they are really honing in on different skills. And if you feed it that positivity, though, that's what's going to stick. So before it starts to harden and it's, kind of set there, it's really important to engage our youth in really positive, empowering content and material. And if you do that and use it in the right way and positive way, it can be really impactful.